Michelle! Hi!
Hello, Todd.
It's good to see you in person.
It's good to see you as well. Hi, everybody.
Hello, everyone. This is our new socially distanced interview style. It's like the Bruce Wayne Manor in here. Bruce Wayne Manor?
Just because
There's a shot in one of the original Batmans with like Bruce Wayne at one end of the table, like long, and then whoever he's talking to at the far end, they're having dinner. That's kind of how I feel right now. It's like...
I feel like, I don't know, for people who watch this, normally when you and I film this, we have like literally the opposite problem of this.
That's right.
Because to get the cameras in and the shots in, we are like knee to knee.
The knee touching, yeah.
Yeah, mm-hmm. So that it looks good on camera, but it feels awkward in person because we're so physically close. So this is literally the opposite of this, and maybe looks bad on camera.
Well, so it's awkward, but everything's awkward right now. Like this is a great time of awkwardness, right?
We're just adjusting and adapting
to
everything.
We're all adjusting to the new awkward, and that's all right. And I don't think we have to explain like what is happening. I think most people are aware of what's happening right now, why we're this far apart.
Yeah. It is mid-April though, mid-April 2020.
Yeah, it's been 6 weeks since I've been in this building.
Yeah, how is it to be in this
anywhere
building?
other than the grocery store? It's great. It's really nice. Yeah, I love this room too. So it feels weird. Yeah, like my 2-year-old was like, I was like, I'm gonna go to work, and he's like, don't shut the door, because that's where work happens now. You know, like the bedroom. And so it was funny to like have to re-explain that. Like, oh no, this is actual. I'm going into work. But it's great to see you.
It's nice to see you too. We've seen each other via Zoom a lot.
Via Zoom,
phone calls, but
and hopefully, kind of the idea here for us was like, people are probably tired of the Zoom screen interview format, and we're definitely tired of that. So let's do something that's maybe awkward, but at least it's something different, right?
That sounds great.
Yeah,
I'm all for it.
So what's happened has basically changed the way we do almost everything in society right now for a bit. Higher education is no different.
Right.
So I figured, since that's our world, let's dive into the world of higher education. What is different now? We're reading a lot. You're great at the research that you do, and you share with all of us about what's happening in other institutions, and just in higher ed in general. What's grabbing your attention? What is of interest to you right now? And we're seeing some trends, we think, that are emerging in terms of what others are doing. What are you seeing out there? What's interesting for you?
Yeah, one of the things that I'm hyper aware of right now. I'm reading so much more than I normally read. It's ridiculous.
I'm impressed. I'm like, wow. Just the amount that you send us all is great. It's amazing.
Well, it just feels like making a decision in these times is so hard. Yeah. And I think everybody's being good and patient and understanding that we're doing the best we can with the information we have, and nobody has the answers. So we're just having to like do the best thing we can do. Yeah. But I feel like, I'm reading a lot of the usual things that I read, like the Chronicle of Higher Education and the Inside Higher Ed and Ed Tech stuff. Right. So I've been reading those things, and I get the daily newsletters and the daily updates, and follow them all on Twitter. So I'm reading the things I usually read, although of course they're writing about very different things now. Yeah. But I'm also, on top of that, reading a lot more of the New York Times and the Atlantic, and I'm watching the governor of Oregon do press conferences, which I never did before.
Did you do that?
No.
Yeah, right?
I mean, no, of course, I did that. Every time she ever spoke, I'm tuned
public
in.
access city council meetings and mayors or governor press releases.
Yeah. And I'm listening to one of the local radio stations now has a daily local podcast they call it The Local, and I've been listening to that every morning. So I'm just getting and reading all the local newsletters that I've long subscribed to but not always read. Yeah. Reading those every day. Yeah. So because it feels like I'm just trying to take, like, in addition to having to understand higher education as an industry and as a field, and understanding what we're doing with that, I also have to understand what's happening in the realm of nonprofits right now, because we're a small nonprofit organization as well. Right. And I'm having to become a pseudo public health expert, at least to understand how the things that we know and that we don't know can inform my decision making about what to do with regard to our campus community. Yeah. And I am really great. I mean, I have been busier right now than I have been ever, probably, since Wayfinding started. And I'm really grateful that we're on spring break.
I know, the timing for us was not too bad.
Yeah, not too bad.
Pretty lucky.
We've been, mid-April right now, we're like halfway through our month-long spring break.
Right.
So we have this little breathing moment where we can actually
We'd have to scramble to
That's right.
Right.
So I'm grateful for that because I have a lot of reading to keep up with.
Yeah.
And a lot of
you and all the
do.
other pseudo public health officials that I see on Facebook every day. I've never seen so many charts in my life on Facebook. It's got to be like a new record for how many people like butt break. I'd love them. I'm like, yeah, like my stepfather-in-law or whatever he is like posting all these charts and graphs, and he's not a health official, but it's funny that people are like what they're doing with their time, and a lot of it is becoming pseudo public health officials. And in your case, it matters to other people because the decisions you make will affect.
Yeah, and trying to get out high quality, accurate information to the people who I'm in direct communication with, so that we're all using the same basis of information to make decisions and to chime in on things.
Right.
As you know, my style of leadership is not very authoritarian. I take a lot of perspectives into account, and I talk to every individual person.
Yeah.
And so I want to make sure that as I'm going into those conversations, we all have the same general basis of information and understanding. So that also, I do take it on myself a little bit to share things. And I have this, my favorite source so far has been this, I think it's a website called COVID-19healthdata.org.
Wow.
And it's by some researchers up out of University of Washington.
Mm-hmm.
And I really appreciate it because it can give pretty good projections based on accurate data, number of cases, number of deaths, hospital resources needed, and so forth. Nice. And it's trying to measure how all countries and all states in the U.S. are doing at flattening the curve.
Yeah.
So I use that a lot. Good news is Oregon's doing well.
Right.
We've got to keep it up, but we've done a good job.
Yeah. So far, so good. So what are we seeing in terms of do you see trends in other institutions? Like, do you see that they're, in terms of what's being put out publicly, like what they're doing to deal with this, especially mainstream higher ed? Like, what are you seeing that's happening?
What's really interesting to me right now is that they're all rethinking the way that they do almost everything.
Yeah.
And out of necessity, having to shift to a lot more of an individualized and human and student-centered model.
Right.
Which that's been my whole point from the start of. That's why I founded Wayfinding, because I felt like higher education was not doing those
moving
things
in the
well.
other direction.
Yeah, it was going in the other direction, and so it brings me optimism to see that that's the general trends that I've been noticing. Is that most decision makers in higher education, and I've also watched a lot of webinars where college presidents are talking about a bunch of different things, or journalists who have been writing about higher education for decades are reflecting on this.
Yeah.
And so that's the overall trend that I see.
Right. Is a rethinking, kind of a mass rethinking out of necessity.
Right.
Yeah.
And it would be nice, part of the mission of Wayfinding is to try to nudge change in higher education as a system.
Yeah.
And this is not the ideal circumstances under which change would occur, but this is the type of change that I think has been long overdue for higher education. Yeah. So I'm encouraged to see, and generally most people I'm listening to seem to be embracing these changes. Maybe wouldn't have, done them quite this way or this fast or whatever, but they seem to be finding value in them.
Yeah, yeah. It's finding silver linings is not super easy to do, but I think it's something that lots of people do out of necessity to move forward. And so for us, that's the kind of what we're focusing on. Like, what are the silver linings in this for us as an institution in the wider world of academia, higher ed, and then in the world at large. So specifically, are there a few things, are there a few specifics in terms of systems that have had to change that you think are, for you, are kind of a silver lining in this, or you're kind of this is moving in a more wayfinding direction?
Yeah. I noticed 4 main areas so far, and I think there's probably more to come. Well, and I guess there's a 5th one that I don't have any clear insight into, but I know that almost all colleges are having to rethink their financial models on which they operate. That we are not having to rethink that, thankfully.
Right.
because our financial model was already quite different.
Right.
But nothing has yet come out, because I think there aren't answers yet about how colleges are going to address that.
Right.
But I think some of that is sort of the underlying part of the other four things that I have been able to get a glimpse in. I've definitely noticed that they're rethinking academics. So you see a lot of colleges now, and high schools also, going to no grades.
Yeah.
So everything is like pass, fail, or incomplete, or whatever.
Right.
And so this whole idea of like removing letter grades and the stigma associated with letter grades, that seems like a silver lining. They're also, because of social distancing, having to shift to smaller class sizes,
Right.
which seems like a good thing.
Right.
And also rethinking, and this I don't know whether this may be a neutral thing, but I think the innovation is a good opportunity, rethinking academic calendars and how those work.
Yeah.
Again, we've always been on a non-traditional academic calendar, so we have a lot more flexibility because of that.
Yeah.
But traditional colleges that are on 16-week semesters are, several of them have already announced that they're going to do their fall term not on a 16-week semester basis,
Yeah.
because they're having to rethink that.
Right.
So I think academics are changing, student services is changing. Again, I feel like long overdue is understanding the value and importance of academic advisors and the role that those individuals play in students' lives, or can play.
Right.
Faculty as an extension of student services, because right now, for a lot of students, if they're at home in their bedroom or living room and they're taking a class online, the only connection maybe they're having is a faculty member through an online course.
Yeah.
So faculty having a much bigger role in the student experience, and having to look at their students more holistically.
Yeah.
Not just as like, oh, my job is to deliver information into their brain.
Right.
So I think that's a positive that I've seen. And just overall, all colleges having to look at students in a more holistic way.
Yeah.
And acknowledging that, I mean, the most vulnerable of our students are still the most vulnerable and are even worse now, because they're probably the ones that maybe don't have a safe home living environment, or a home environment at all, or they're having to work throughout all of this while other people don't have to do that, or they don't have internet access.
Yeah, equity issues are huge right now.
That's getting so much worse. And this is making every institution look at that from new angles.
Right.
And not just be like, well, we're putting them all in this classroom and in this dorm and in this cafeteria to even that out.
Or even switch to online. That makes some assumptions about equity that just are not real.
Absolutely.
That we can all just suddenly have the same access.
Right.
So that's interesting to me. And I guess what I'm thinking as you're talking is like, we're all seeing a lot more of each other's humanity now, because like when you see Joe Biden in his basement, or you see these people who are normally, they have these institutions and these the trappings of these institutions around them. You don't see their humanity as much. It's the same for faculty and students at higher ed. Like when a student's in their living room, when a faculty member is in their living room, they're a little bit more human to you.
Right.
So hopefully that's something that comes out of it.
Yeah.
For me, I mean, I don't know if you've had this feeling, but and I'm not directly involved in education in terms of like being a faculty member. I work here, which is direct, but then my wife is also an assistant principal. And for me, discussing with her and talking with you, for me, this feels a little bit like a Wizard of Oz pull back the curtain moment, in terms of like these decisions, these rules, these systems that have been put in place. Now they're just arbitrarily being changed. Like, to have grades, to have standardized testing, we're having to rethink those things. And in rethinking those, or in making these changes, having school boards just decide, or superintendents decide, now we're not going to do grades. It makes you question,
why did we do
that in the first place?
Yeah.
Or if we can make this radical change in just a month's time, can we keep it? Can we do other things that are similar? So I'm definitely having those conversations at home, and it seems interesting to be able to try to seize this moment and make the best out of it, in terms of like, we're having to rethink systems, so let's really do that. Let's invest in like long-term more sustainable thinking about these systems. Does that feel?
Yeah, and the place I see that happening the most in the higher education landscape is in the admissions, the system, that whole thing, and the way it's traditionally worked, and all the things that we all hold up to be these pillars. They're all breaking down. Standardized tests you mentioned, because it's like, so a lot of colleges are now saying, okay, well, we're not going to require standardized test scores because the testing companies can't,
Right.
And I mean, some colleges had already made that move, but now most of them are going to have to be way more flexible on that. And why didn't we just do that in the first place? Like, why do we even have standardized tests in the first place?
Right.
And
Incentivizing
GPAs
learning. Are there other ways, creative ways, better ways that we could incentivize learning, incentivize people to want to learn, than just giving them a grade or even a pass-fail or some number attached to a test, and to incentivize them to attend. What I think is kind of interesting that I've noticed is like a lot of our students are continuing to really engage with us online, whereas when I talk to like public school teachers, friends, my wife, like they're getting 40%, 40% of students attending, because it's not, they're not mandating it. They're not saying you have to do this. Here in PPS, Portland Public Schools, like what they're saying is if you're an on-track senior, you do not have to attend any more school.
Right.
So that it seems so arbitrary. These decisions, like, well, that's just a decision that they just came up with. It wasn't. There's no real reason behind it other than this is the decision that we're making right now because we're making it. Yeah. Like everyone's having to operate on the fly, and I think that's it's been very interesting to see how the way that we've incentivized learning is to make learning the focus of the school. It's the mission of the school. It's not to get you to check a box, to get you to get a higher score on a standardized test. And so what I see is like our students they're not primed and formed to attend because they want to get some other thing out of it other than like the community experience, the interaction, and the knowledge, the learning, and also the emotional support. And I think that has been completely missed by a lot of academic institutions, the relationships and the emotional support, because that's all people wanted right now, especially in the early stages. Like no student was like, oh God, but what about my chemistry assignment? I mean, there might be one or two of them out there, and God bless them, but like most of them just needed the emotional support and the mentorship relationship with their faculty, if they had that sort of a relationship. So that's what I've found really fascinating in all this, is that like
and we also are not, I mean, right now we're on break, so students don't have to engage with us at all, but they are.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's not mandatory in any way. But I've been reading a couple of articles that have said they have this like little in parentheses, if we can reach the student. So that it's making me realize how many colleges and high schools just don't even know how to get a hold of a student. They don't have enough of a personal relationship. And in our case, I mean, the students probably hear from us too much. I mean, we call them, we text them, we FaceTime them, we Zoom them, all of the things. We're Facebook friends with them, whatever. So getting in touch with students is, I mean, every once in a while there are some that are harder to get in touch with, but it's not that we don't have a way to get in touch with them. So I think the relationship, that this shift is highlighting the importance of human relationships is a silver lining. And I'm hopeful that we can maintain that focus as we go forward.
I don't know if this will stick in terms of organizations rethinking what they're doing or seeing it as an opportunity to like make system change for the better on the long term. What do you think? You think, well, maybe some?
I hope so. I really hope so. I mean, some of it's gonna have to change on the long term, just because people are going to get a glimpse of this and then want more of this. And I'm hoping that I'm thinking that the most likely place that's going to come from are the students and the faculty who are going to say, this kind of is, I like it this way better. And right now I'm hearing a lot about faculty and students who were at small private liberal arts colleges because of the in-person relationships and connections and mentorships that are now being forced to do everything online. And they're being fairly vocal that they don't want to be doing it that way. And so I think that that's also just a helpful moment where there's been an ongoing debate about like online learning and not online learning, and now it's like, okay, well, everybody's having to try it now, so you're getting to see firsthand where it can be beneficial and where it's not effective, as opposed to it all being hypothetical. So I think some of that is going to permanently change just the way we think about what our options are.
So in terms of the short term, midterm for us, the next few months.
What does that mean? Okay, next few months. Got it. I'm like, is that today? Is that next week?
Exactly.
What are we
Our
talking?
concept of time is blown apart
I have no idea.
So I mean, I'm thinking like the next month or two. It's still really fluid. The guidance that we're getting from the state is still kind of like up in the air. We don't have any clear direction. Okay, the stay-at-home order, we're gonna lift that
right.
By mid-May. We don't know. We have some guesses, but I think what I've also found interesting is in our discussions, I feel like, and maybe you feel differently, but I feel like we're on a pretty firm ground relative to where a lot of other institutions and organizations are, because we are a small scale, human scale organization, and we can react quickly, and also we're kind of set up well, whether we have to do some pivoting online, because we have that one-to-one support option, which is really helpful for both online and in-person education.
Right.
So I don't know if you feel that way, but I feel like, we've got some plans in place, that contingency plans that feel pretty steady, and we don't have to freak out too much about what's coming down the pipe. But what do you think? Where do you think we will be? Where would you like to be in the short term? In terms of how we're gonna do the next. Our term is supposed to be starting up
in
soon,
a couple weeks.
So what do you see the next couple months looking like here at Wayfinding?
Yeah. Well, it's hard to say.
Yes.
Doing the best we can. What it seems like right now is, so as stressful as everything has been, I do feel a lot of gratitude that all of the things that we've been talking about what other colleges are having to try to figure out and rethink and navigate, that's already how we did everything.
Right.
And so we do have an advantage right now that we're not having to rethink our entire purpose for existing and our entire business model and our entire everything. We do have to put in place some contingency plans and think through things like, okay, so we're a small college, and we do have the ability, like physically and structurally, we can actually bring back our entire student body for in-person classes, have classrooms where they can maintain social distancing like what we've got here, enhanced sanitization procedure. We don't have cafeterias, we don't have dorms, we don't have a lot of the things that other colleges are just saying, well, what do I do about this?
Yeah.
So both from a spiritual and philosophy perspective of, we already were individualized and holistic and relationship based and human scale, and structurally and physically we have a campus and a small enough student body that lets us do this.
Right.
So I feel a lot of gratitude that we're not having to existentially rethink things, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And so that said, where we are right now is that we have one term left in the current academic year, and at the end of that term, our third cohort graduates. So we want to make sure that happens for them, and that our cohorts 4 and 5 stay on track.
Right.
And it seems like we should be able to do that. We're definitely going to start the term later than we would have planned. Yeah. Which is fine, because again, we have a non-traditional academic calendar, so we had these large breaks for travel experiences, which, since we can't travel right now, if we sneak into a little bit of the break and take a bit of that away, that's okay.
Right.
So we have, just by nature of the way we've set it up, we've got a lot of flexibility. So there are some elements of our curriculum that can continue as they have been for the past month. Normally on breaks, the guides are not checking in with their students, and yet during this break they have been. Yeah. So they can keep doing that via phone and Zoom and Google Hangout and Skype and FaceTime, and they're using literally all of the things. Yeah. So they can keep doing that. We also have a couple of labs which typically are open to the community as well as students. A couple of them, the information is such that it can be done online. For example, we have a personal finance lab that was halfway through when this happened, and we can finish that online. And a project planning lab that we can do online. So we can do some of that. For our core courses, though, what we're doing right now, and we'll see, we don't know what's going to happen, because we just got an update this morning from the executive director of the Oregon Higher Education Coordinating Commission, HEC. And it's based on the governor's newest executive order in Oregon. And so we're working with the state to see if we can potentially be a pilot test for how colleges can prepare to open up in-person, to resume in-person instruction in the fall.
Probably stages is what's going to have to happen.
Yeah, because we might be the only college in Oregon that is small enough that we could actually... Or the country. Yeah, actually probably in the whole country. Where we can do it with all of the safety precautions and social distancing precautions, and we have a stable population, and we have... So we may be in a unique position to be helpful right now.
Sure. Yeah.
To all the colleges in the state of Oregon and maybe beyond to pilot test some things and see how things can go.
Yeah.
So right now I'm in conversation with the Higher Education Coordinating Commission to see if that's something they're interested in.
Yeah.
And either way, we should be able to, once we find out when the governor is going to either lift or loosen the current stay home, save lives executive order, we'll be able to resume and host our summer term and then graduate our third cohort. So without having to existentially rethink everything. For us, I think the biggest impact is, and we're finding other ways to do it. We're offering all these free webinars to our community. But one of our pillars of our beliefs is that community and college should be woven together. So we spend a lot of time bringing community into our campus and having our students go out into the community. And that's one of the things that's one
of our fundamental things that we had to alter a bit.
And we're having to not, unless they're online, we can't have community members participating in labs with us, and we usually rent our building to all sorts of nonprofits for their fundraising events, and we can't be doing that right now. So there's a lot of the community interaction that we're going to have to find other ways to accomplish. But that's really the only part that we're having to sort of existentially adapt to for the time being. And our students have been great, and the faculty and the guides, oh my gosh, everybody's tremendous, and they're like just going above. They've always been going above and beyond, and they're raising that bar for themselves now too, which is pretty amazing to watch.
That's cool. Yeah, it would be neat. We should show, if we can, a clip of how we've set up the nav hall out there in terms of we're prepared to do social distancing of 8 feet. Like every student will have their own workstation. I hope we're allowed to do a test. I think it would be an in-person education test, because I think we can do it safely. I think we can do it in a way that lots of other businesses are already being allowed to permit, and also we have the advantage of having a stable population, so we could be pioneers in the healthcare.
That was not my
I mean, you started out as a pioneer, you might as well keep going. I'm sure you know, we'll see what happens in the next 20 years, but maybe maybe we'll get into other realms, healthcare.
This is not how I intended to be a pioneer in the realm of higher education. This is not part of the plan.
I'm sure not. I know, but once you're a pioneer, Michelle,
you just go with it.
You've signed up for
every chance you get. you say, oh yeah, me first, please.
Right, exactly.
We'll do that.
I appreciate you being able to see you in person.
That's nice.
And being able to be here, and this is lovely. And I think there's reason for optimism, hopefully nationwide, and we can and we'll have updates for folks over the next few weeks. We'll see what happens. We'll see if we have this pioneering pilot program going, then we can maybe showcase that a bit.
Absolutely. Oh, we should say bye to these people over here, because we forgot that they were even over there.
That's true. Those people in that tiny little device.
And that is a good, this is one of our ways that we can connect with our extended community during this time. So we have been putting out more videos and doing things like that, so that we actually, Jonathan, our lead matchmaker, filmed a brand new campus tour with a totally empty building, and just walked around by himself with a little selfie stick and filmed a campus tour. So that's on our YouTube channel, and totally worth watching, because you get pure Jonathan in that, which is really great. So things like that, and the free webinars that we're offering on the one we've been doing and we're doing every week right now is how to craft a self-care pandemic plan. So that's been great.
Really popular. Yeah, cool. Well, thanks everyone for watching, if you've watched, and thanks, Michelle.
Thank you, Ty. Good to see you too. Enjoy.